Well, good evening, everybody. This is N7DND, and welcome to DCARC on the Air. It's our Tuesday night meeting. It's now 18:30? 19:30. Okay, 19:30. Larry corrected me. We're here in my shack in Bountiful, Utah, and we're here for DCARC on the Air. And I want to welcome everybody here this evening that's out there listening. And Larry's here in the shack with me, and Craig tells me he's about. And I hope Greg's around, and we'll be asking for things. Anyway, I'm going to pass this over for Larry for a little bit of information, and then we'll be passing it off to Craig, and he can talk about handhelds. That's our subject matter for tonight, and then we'll go over to Greg, and we'll have some fun here tonight. So everybody's welcome, and everybody's willing to check in. This is pretty much a round table. We don't do roll calls. We just have fun. So I'm going to pass it over to Larry, KV7LC and 7DND.
Gary, this is Larry, KV7LC. Just a couple of housekeeping items for you real quick. Don't forget that as we are passing the mic around, talking to each other, to give ample time for the repeater to reset so we don't time it out. And also, all comments and questions are absolutely welcome today. Our topic for tonight is going to be handheld radios. And just talking about their use and what we're doing with them and how we can use them to help serve our communities. It's also a great thing to be versed on a couple of different models so that as we get new hams within the club or in our neighborhoods, we can help them as they go find their next best friend when it comes to radios. I'm excited for tonight. I want to thank everybody for being on the air. Also, I want to thank Mike Groves, who is recording these for us, and we're putting those up on our website a few days after we're done with the net. So if you missed tonight, or if a friend of yours misses tonight and wants to see it, just check out our website and you'll find it there. So with that, let's see if Craig is on the air tonight, and he can take it from here. Craig, are you here? This is Larry turning it over to you, KV7LC.
Hi, this is Craig, N7HYP. I just wanted to tell a quick story about my introduction to handhelds and mobile operation. So, in spite of Gary's instruction that real hams drill holes, I was hesitant to commit to a mobile radio in my car. I wasn't sure how long I was going to keep the car and how much I was going to use it. So he persuaded me that there was a good way to go. So we used a Comet B10, about 12 inches long. I guess that's kind of a quarter wave. A Comet 3D4M mobile lip mount and cable assembly, and the Diamond Antenna K400 series, which is the lip mount. So putting the antenna on the car is just a kind of a pressure squeeze kind of thing. Mounts on the lip of your hood, so I didn't have to drill a hole in the car. And then Gary showed me, and I didn't actually do it. He showed me how to get the cable in through the firewall into the driver's side. And then I just got a little adapter for my handheld, and it's turned out that my handheld radio is what I use for my mobile. And then as time went on, I used my handheld for my shack as well until I could get the money together to buy a nice radio. So that's basically the story I wanted to share, that you can get into it without committing to all kinds of stuff. If there are any questions, now would be a good time.
7UHP.
Go ahead, Greg.
The only thing I'd add is if you're going to pull coax into the car and use the handheld plugged into regular coax, they do make little pigtails, and that'll put less stress on the radio connector so you don't break the antenna jack. Just a suggestion. K7UHP.
I use the microphone and speaker and combination, so I clip that to my seat belt, and I just put the radio in my lap, and I can control it pretty well. And then early on, when I didn't know what all was going on in radio, I would just put it on scan and find out who was on. So if you're a little timid or you're not sure what you want to, how much you want to invest, it's not a bad way to go. I've had very little trouble, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. That's all I have. Turn this back over to Gary. And 7HYP, Craig.
7HYP and 7D&D. K7UHP, why don't you take it for a minute and tell me what's on your mind? Tell us all what's on your mind.
K7UHP, well, there's many things on my mind, but we won't go there. Again, we welcome everybody to our open discussion. There's many ways to go mobile. I love the idea of starting with handheld. That's what I did for many years when I first started. Used some mag mount antennas. That's what got me going before I could get a used mobile, and went from there. There's certainly other ideas. They make some little pigtails that will help. I love Craig's little idea of using a speaker mic. Then you don't have to put a lot of stress on the coax that plugs into the radio. And nowadays there's quite a bit of used equipment that's available even on mobile. So with that, Gary, I'm going to send it back over to you. I've got a grandkids game, so I'm going to jump out for a minute and I'll try to listen. And hopefully I can get back, but if not, that's where I'm at. And 7D&D from K7UHP.
7UHP and 7D&D. Well, thank you. That's a great idea. I know that I started out the same way with a handheld. That was my first radio, a Yaesu VX5. My bride bought it for me when we were down in Las Vegas, and that was my only radio for a long time until my Elmer, AC7H, introduced me to a real radio, a big HF rig, and then I was really hooked. But yeah, AC7H is the only person I know, a real ham, that drills holes in his car. But that being said, a mag mount works really good with a handheld, and it makes a great mobile. So another thing about mobile in a car is that you can plug it into a cigarette lighter, and it doesn't draw enough current to cause any problems. So if you're going to go ahead and use a mobile, then that's one of the best ways to do it, is just using a handheld. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Larry. Larry, why don't you tell us more about what you've done?
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it. This is Larry, KV7LC. As with all radios, and is the nature of our hobby, we all have opinions, and we all have ideas of what works best, and I'm no different. So feel free, as we're having this discussion, to chime in, and let's keep this discussion going. So for me, I got involved with ham radio, and my very first handheld, which was Yaesu 6, VX6, I believe. It was a nice submersible radio, because I was doing a lot of backpacking and boating and that kind of thing, and I could just see that handheld taking a swim one day, and so that's why I picked that one. But I think the most important thing is, especially if you're in the market looking for a handheld, either your first or your third or fourth, is to talk with members that have different radios. Find out what they like, why they like it. For me, one of the things that's important is the ease of programming. I don't like a radio that I have to go out and get the book every single time to change a frequency or to set up a new repeater frequency in it. That doesn't make my life happy. I want to be able to just program on the fly so I can be up and running. And then also something that is convenient enough that I take it with me and use it. Because as with any hobby or any other skill, if you're not using it, you lose it. And for us, communication is that hobby and skill we have to keep practicing with. And so having a radio with you as often as possible helps you to stay on the air and interested in what's going on, and become a resource for your community in those times of emergencies where they call upon us. that, let's open it up to anyone that's listening. If you've got questions or comments, please come back with your first name and call sign, and we'll go ahead and acknowledge you, and you can add to our discussion. So I'll open it up.
D7 UUF, David.
Go ahead, David.
Thanks, Larry. Yeah, I have a few comments about handhelds. There's an adapter that is really good to use on handhelds if you want to use it for your mobile rig antennas. The one end is SMA that screws onto your handheld if your handheld is SMA, and then the other end is SO239, which you can screw your PL239 into, and the coax is smaller than these the cords that you use these they're on these mobile rigs and stuff, and it really works really good. I got mine from Radio Shack. I think they were sending them or something. I can't remember what, but I know they make the coax that small that you can use it. But one thing is you can't use more than 10 feet. But it really works good. And then there's another one thing I found out about these handhelds. Let me hurry and reset here. Okay. A friend of mine told me, and I thought that was interesting, is that the Yaesu VX5R, VX7R, and probably the 6 and 8, I assume, will it lists as those doing the 70 centimeters, 2 meters, and 6 meters. But he said that they don't advertise this when you buy them and stuff, but he told me that they will work on the 220 band or the 1.25 meter. And I said, oh, really? And he said, oh, yeah, they will. And I thought, interesting. And so I bought me a tri-band whip antenna for the 70 centimeters, 220 band, and the 2 meter band, but I have yet to try it on the 220 band. And I thought that was great. And I didn't know that. And I thought that was excellent. And Gary, I still hope you have that PX5R, because if you don't, I'll tell you that those are good radios. If I had the money, I'd buy me another one, because I really enjoyed that radio. Back to you, Larry. This is KD7UUF.
Thank you so much for your comments. This is Larry, KV7LC. Yeah, it's amazing what we can actually do with these handhelds, and become radioactive for a nominal investment into the hobby. And so with that, we'll open it up. Anyone else out there with any comments or questions that you want to throw out to the group? Come now, please, with your first name and call sign.
AE7 VSP, Mike.
Go ahead, Mike.
I've been running handhelds since I became a ham about 11 years ago when I was in law enforcement. I recently retired from law enforcement and looking at mounting on my house. I purchased an Ed Fong antenna, dual band. I don't know if anybody's had any experience with them. I'm just looking for some feedback.
Question, Mike. Go ahead. Mike had a dead battery. Are you still there, Mike?
Yeah, I'm here. Do you copy me now? Sorry, had to switch radios. I've been in ham about 10 years. Got into it in law enforcement when I was part of the Aries in Weber County. I'm switching to my home antenna now. I bought an Ed Fong antenna. I'm not sure how it works, if anybody's got any feedback on the Ed Fong.
I don't have any feedback on that. That antenna, I've never had anything to do it. But you know, you get 19 inches in the air, and it will work really well, no matter what the brand is. Back to you, Mike.
I have yet to hook it up. It is mounted on my home. Some issues with my mobile radio, my Yaesu FT7800. I'm trying to work out, so I haven't had a chance to try it yet.
The club has a meter, and you're welcome to take it and put a meter on it and see what it is, good or bad, and that way you'll know before you go to all the work to go ahead and do that. But yeah, we can do that. Is anybody else out there that would like to comment on this antenna? Now, Mike, it's back to you. You have anything else to comment on?
I haven't talked on the ham much because the guy I used to talk to moved to Randolph, so I don't talk on the ham much, but KE7 VSP, back to net control.
Thank you, Mike. Glad to Randolph. Oh, that's not far away. That's a pretty nice place. Anyway, this is N7D&D Gary here in Bountiful with Larry, and this is a roundtable tonight for the DCARC. I've got a number of handhelds, and I like handhelds. I programmed a lot from the $35 radio all the way up to the $350 handheld. And you know, and what Larry said originally, programming them is kind of the hardest thing to learn how to do. We can all pretty much load a program on our computer and put them on, and after you do 2 or 3 it makes it easy. But I found the 3 or 4 major brands are easier to program than the Chinese versions, but once you learn how to do it, it's not too bad. But handhelds work really well, and if I have anything to say or anything tonight that I find that's the most important thing I can say is antenna, antenna, antenna. And if you've got 5 watts or 3 watts or 300 milliwatts and you're putting it out to a good antenna, be it a mag mount on a file cabinet in your shack, or you got it on the top of your car, or if you're lucky enough to put up a wire outside, it makes a big difference on how your radio sounds. Just a minute. I've called a lot of church nets and stuff, and all the way from Bountiful up into Layton and Clearfield, and it amazes me how many of them are running handhelds, and just because they've taken a few minutes to put up an antenna outside, you can hear them loud and clear. It's really good. Anyway, I know there's a fellow here that I've been elmering, Conogle, Gary, a good friend of mine who lives over in Centerville, and he was always scratchy and all kinds of stuff, and so I finally twisted his arm hard enough, and we put a little mag mount outside up on his rain gutter, and now he talks all over the area. Unbelievable, just a little bit getting outside, and it can be stealthy as can be, but it makes a big difference. I'm going to pass it back over to you, Craig. Are you out there? N7HYP. Any comments?
I am still here, Craig, N7HYP. I think the other thing that I wanted to say tonight was just how grateful I am for the friendliness of the club. From as much as I talk, you wouldn't know that there's a fair amount of mic fright here, and I was able to ask for radio checks and microphone checks and those kinds of things, and pretty much every time had somebody come back and tell me what they were hearing. So it's just really great to have a club where people are friendly and helpful, and the people that I've talked to about radio have been very generous with their time, especially Gary. And I just wanted to kind of share that. If you're suffering from mic fright, track one of us down and let's talk. Craig, N7HYP.
Larry, KV7LC. So, one thing that I would like to stress is that a good handheld radio with a good antenna on it is one of those utility things in our shack. It's kind of like a big screwdriver in your toolkit. It's amazing how many things you can do with that big screwdriver when you really need to. Same thing happens with our handhelds. With a few connectors, you can hook that handheld up to a TNC and do some digital stuff with it, do some packet. With a couple of spare batteries and being brave and signing up to help out in a special event like a parade, you can be communicating information to parade and organizer officials and really becoming very useful to our community. But it really comes down to getting on the air, using the radio, and knowing what it can do and how long it can do it. I have a standing requirement in my shack that when I buy a new handheld, I always buy at least one spare battery to go along with it. So that, one, I always have one on the charger, but also that when I'm taking it out and about, that I have a backup, so that if I happen to be long-winded, like I am right now, I can change batteries and keep going. But that's just been my experience. I'd love to hear about yours, if you have used a handheld in a parade or other special event. What kind of things you have in your go bag for your handheld by way of attachments and that kind of thing. We'd love to hear what you have and what you think is important. So come back with your first name and call sign and take it from there. This is KV7LC.
KI7SLN, Chad.
Hey, Chad.
This is actually a fortuitous discussion for me. I just recently picked up a roll-up J-pole for my handheld. I'm sitting here right now on my FT60. And it's something I've been experimenting with just to try and get up into the mountains and still be able to maintain communication. And I was wondering if you could give me a read back on my signal.
Well, thanks for participating. Your signal's coming in absolutely loud and clear. It's like you're sitting right here in the shack. This is KV7LC. Back to you.
Thank you much. Yep, I'm sitting in Central Bountiful and just happened to come across the Facebook post that you were going to be having a net and wanted to tune in and listen and give a little feedback. And that is clear.
Thank you so much for joining us. And once again, anyone else have any comments or questions that you want to throw out to the group?
Some UUF, David.
Hi, David.
One comment on something Gary was mentioning about antennas and handhelds, and I said this I say this every time, and some people might get sick and tired hearing this, others don't, but to me, it doesn't matter if you go out and spend a lot of money on a handheld and you get an antenna that really doesn't work at all or hardly works, or even even the antenna that comes with the radio will work better than an antenna that's made not as good as the one that came with the radio. But however, if you buy the best antenna that you can afford for a handheld, by all means, you're really going to get out better. Your signal's going to be good, and you can have a radio a handheld that does work, but not as good as the new one. But guess what? You're going to get out there, and your signal is going to be great, because it's more about the antenna than it is a handheld. And one thing I've noticed that whenever, and this is something I'm going to do from now on, if I ever buy a handheld, one of the first things I'm going to do is buy those dual band whip antennas, or just a really good whip antenna for that radio, because those the rubber ducks that come with it, they're pretty good, but I can move all around and when I have a whip antenna on a handheld, and I can get out even further and a whole lot better than with the rubber duck that comes with the radio. So hopefully that's a good advice for ham radio operators. Back to the group. Back to you, Larry, KD7UUF.
Thanks so much. Hey, I'm just curious, is Mike Groves, KD7MG, are you out and listening in on this net tonight?
Affirmative, KD7MG.
Mike, would you mind taking a minute or two and just talking about what you look for when you're setting up a special event? I know you have worked the Leighton parades quite often, and I'm just curious what you have found that is extremely helpful during those special events, and if you'd share it with the group. This is KV7LC.
Well, we try to make them as radio friendly as possible by either using simplex or crossband repeat or a repeater. So those with just a stock 2-meter radio can participate and have a good time out there. One thing, I bought an Anytone, and one thing that really impressed me about this radio was a massive battery capacity on it. I mean, I can scan all day long and jump in and transmit and whatnot with no problem at all. So it's something to look for in a radio. That's the one thing I really like about this. Anyway, yeah, events are fun, and if you have an aftermarket, little longer rubber duck, you will usually get out and be heard a lot better than a stock rubber duck, like David said. But yeah, I don't know. Events are something to not shy away from just because you have a stock radio. We will definitely have fun with that. KD7MG.
7MG, KV7LC. Thanks so much, Mike, for that input and the good information about the Anytones. I've actually been looking at a couple of those. Haven't invested in one yet, but thinking about it. So with that, I'm going to throw this back over to Gary and 7DND, and he'll take it from here. Go ahead, Gary.
Okay, I just heard a little bit of APRS on our repeater. Somebody's got their modem turned on in their radio. Anyway, I do a big the Bountiful Handcart Days parade every year. I have for years. But I found that what Mike's saying is it's again the antenna, and with a handheld, some of the accessories that you need with handhelds that Larry touched on a little bit is a spare battery or a way to charge your radio. Battery eliminators work really good. There's many different kinds of those. There's earbuds, and I found over the years that the public safety version of earbuds that are kind of curly-Q and they clip to your collar and go in your ear, they're more comfortable because when you're doing an event for 4 or 5 hours with your handheld, it just makes it more comfortable. Speaker mic, if you're going to do a net like this, it comes in really handy. A lot of times if you buy yourself a handheld, it's nice to have a desk charger. You can set it on your desk and it always stays charged. I know a lot of the Bofong radios and the Watson and stuff radios come with desk chargers, and they work really, really well. So anytime you want to use that, you can pick it up, and it's always charged up, and you can go about your business and do that. So desk charger is really kind of another fun accessories. We haven't hit anything about specific kinds of radios. We can do that. Is there any more comments about anything in general about handhelds? Come back now, please.
AC7RAF, Hall.
Good evening, Hall. I knew you were lurking out there. Come and tell us your version. And 7DND.
7DND with the group, KC7RAF. Well, one thing I was going to throw out there regarding handhelds and batteries is that something I have found between the Chinese radios, the Bofang and the Oxons, is that on the Auxon, the WOUXUN, if you leave the battery in the radio, it's charged, you leave it in the radio and set it on the shelf, that battery will, through the radio, self-discharge over time. Much faster than if you take it out of the radio, set it on the shelf by the radio, that battery will sit there charged for a long time. But that particular brand has a tendency, something in its circuitry that is kept alive even though the radio is turned off. And so with the Auxons, definitely if you're going to set them on the shelf, just pop the battery out and leave it beside it. The Baofangs work just fine whether the battery's in or out. At least that's been my experience. This is KC7RF, back to net.
Thank you, Hall. That's very much so. I found that to be, generally there's some kind of, I call it ghost circuitry inside the radios, because I know that your TV set that's hanging on the wall, you reach over and you hit the remote and it pops right on. Well, it's already hot and running, and there's circuitry running around. And our handhelds are no different, so remember to keep them charged up, and I always store most of my batteries on my radios separately. That way I can pop them on and they're ready to go. Anybody else have any general comments before we jump off for a few minutes and talk about specifics? CMR, Clay? Copy, Dave, go ahead.
Thanks, Gary. Somebody told me, and I forgot who it was, that after you've charged a handheld, a battery from your handheld, and I'm talking about the Yaesu VX7R, that when you're not using it, that's a good idea to also take the battery out and put the battery back in when you're using it, and take the battery out when you're not. I'm just wondering if you've heard of anything, or if that's or if you or anyone have heard of that before. Back to you, Gary, KD7UUF.
Well, I found that with most of the handhelds that I've had, that I generally store them separately, and that way, and I have kind of a routine. I know that the city has a whole bunch of radios that we bought, mostly the Baofeng versions and stuff, and we have to keep them on chargers because they have a tendency to run themselves down. But I always store mine separately, and I have a routine of going and charging them occasionally. So that's and there was another comment in there. Come now, please. Clay?
Rob?
I think I copied a Rob there. Come again?
That's correct.
Rob?
So, as a couple of you know, I've been a ham for about a month. In fact, I stumbled across this trying to get somebody to say hi to on UHF, VHF, and I stumbled across the 449.925 repeater. And I think that's where I met Mike. Anyway, I ended up taking my tech, and I had bought a Baofeng, was listening to with it, and then when I asked her for a few weeks, I never keyed up, but I listened to it and did APRS and all that fun stuff, and then when I passed my test, I got a tech in general, and one sitting, I went ahead and bought the Yaesu FT3DR, which is great for APRS. Just so you know, it will not send APRS out to your computer over the cable. It'll send the waypoint, but not the actual APRS data, so you can see where people are, but you can't read messages or anything like that through to your computer through it. I used to repair consumer electronics, so the comment about the battery running down, if your radio has a click off and on, where you twist the dial, the volume knob, and it actually clicks off, that battery is completely disconnected and you're good to go. But if it has a soft power on, your power circuit's always monitoring, and that takes power, so you're always going to slowly drain. As far as your batteries go, NiCats and stuff have a memory to them,
So if you use them for 10 seconds, then charge, and use for 10 seconds, charge, they're only going to last for 10 seconds. But all the batteries in our systems are lithium ion, and they're best to keep charged at all times and not let discharge. It's better to go down halfway and then recharge it again than it is to go down all the way. And then I had a comment about the antennas. I've been through about 8 or 9 of them on my handheld. And for UHF, the best one I found so far was this two-way radio RH660S. It's just a telescopic antenna with no coil in it, and it actually is the only one I can use on the UHF in my house.
Hey, that's great. I know that that I've got a number of different antennas for my handhelds, and they all have their place. I know I have a little tiny stubby. It's made by Comet, and it's probably only 2.5 to 3 inches tall, and I use it all the time. I use it for parades, and I use it around the house here to talk locally. But if you have 3 or 4 different antennas for your handheld, those are great accessories to have. Is there anybody else that has a comment about accessories, and we'll move on to batteries a little bit?
And 7JEH.
I have no copy. The last caller, please come again, please, with your first name and call sign. Okay, nothing heard. Do we have any other general comments about handhelds before we move on and talk about maybe a little bit more specific? It's 8 minutes after the hour, and we're going to try to keep this to an hour if best we can. But any other general comments about handhelds?
Brent.
I believe we pulled Brent out of that. We're going to do etiquette here one of these days, and we'll talk about that. You need to push down on your button and then start talking. Go ahead.
DC7RAF. Gary, you had a double there.
Been a hand.
Go ahead. I didn't get either one of them.
JEH was out there trying to get in a couple of times. KC7RAF.
Still find them once in a while.
Go ahead, JEH. It's all yours.
The 2 bands. Here's somebody else popping in there. I don't know if they know what's going on or what. Anyway, when I started off in '87, my first handheld was the FT727, which was the first blue laser we ever made. This thing was about a foot long and 5 watts out. Monster. I was traveling a lot and driving between Elko and Las Vegas, whereas your nearest repeater is probably 50, 60 miles away at times. So I was the typical cheap new ham and, stumbled into an amplifier and put that in my car and had an outside antenna and worked really well. But guys, when you're getting ready to drool on these amplifiers and go that route with an HT, it's time to buy a mobile or a base station. You get a much better front end, better rejection of signals. It's just a better radio all the way around. So don't fall into the trap of trying to build yourself a little. They used to have docking ports for commercial, like policemen, where they plop their radio in a docking port in their police car and have a quote-unquote mobile, and it's a compromise. And speaking of compromise, any antenna you put on an HT is a compromise. There's little tricks with the tiger tails that Hall has shown us where you put a wire that acts as part of a ground plane, but any antenna on an HT is not much better than a dead short. Back to you guys. This is N7JEH.
Joe, I think we had 2 or 3 doubles in there. Joe, those are great comments, and I have to agree. When you get to that point where you want a little bit more power, it's a lot better to go and get a little bit better radio and put it in your car. You can buy a good 20-watt radio now and mobile and put it in your car for around $70 or $80. I understand that. One thing if I want to comment about it, this is N7D&D. I've always got an opinion, and you guys all know that, but I found that most people start out with an inexpensive radio because that's what they can't afford. That's what they can't afford in your budget. But I found most hams, after they've had that radio 6 months or a year, end up buying a little bit better one and a little bit better one and a little bit better one. And if they'd have saved their coins, maybe they could have bought that little bit better one to start with. but that's just an opinion on my side. So anyway, okay. There was 2 or 3 people that wanted to comment there when Joe was there. Give me your first name and call sign so I can pull you out.
U1 CMR, Clay.
Go ahead, Clay.
I'll kind of just take off to where you were talking about, Gary. A lot of us start out with the cheap radio or less expensive radio. I just wanted to let everybody know we all, as hams, we really like to have a great signal and a great sound. And the speaker mics for the Baofengs are very, very poor. However, the good news is there's a little mic enhancement that you can learn on YouTube, and the YouTube video, it's called Wallaroo Mac Baofeng Mic Enhancement. And with about 10 minutes, and it's not very technical, but with about 10 minutes, you can turn that microphone that nobody can hear, if it sounds like a tin can, where it actually has pretty good audio. W1 CMR, back to you, Gary.
And that night, somehow we lost Gary.
This is Larry, KV7LC. Sorry we lost Gary here. I was listening to him just fine. So thanks a lot for letting us know that he dropped out. We'll figure out what's going on there. But with that, so are there any other comments or suggestions or questions that you have about general handheld radios or anything like that? Come back with your call and your first name, please.
DC7H, Brent.
Go ahead, Brent. This is KV7LC. It's all yours, Brent.
Okay, just had a couple of real general comments as I've been eavesdropping on the net here. One thing about antennas, whether it's this kind of radio or whatever, the antenna is one of the most important parts of your radio. And it doesn't only help with transmitting, but it also helps with receive. So an antenna versus an amplifier, the antenna is a better choice because it works on both transmit and receive, whereas an amplifier would only work in a transmit situation. Next comment is, used to teach amateur radio classes, and one of the things I taught in the class was a handheld, or a handy talk as they call it. The handy talk is handy for those that are using it, but for the rest of us who are trying to listen to it, sometimes it's kind of difficult. So unless you're willing to participate and purchase at least a antenna for your mobile and for your home, you're sometimes makes it very marginal for the rest of us trying to listen to you. And the next comment was on these public service events, the encouragement for everybody to participate. We would like to extend that also, and we also, generally speaking, the net control station at these public events will have something extra as far as being able to access the repeaters more reliably through crossband radios, through high-powered or mobile radios instead of handheld, and so the net controls with their backups, etc., and antennas and such are usually very well, you might say, well prepared to be able to communicate regardless of the situation. AC7.
Thank you, Brent, for that. Those are some very valuable words of wisdom that I'm very glad that you participated today. So far, we've had about 13 people comment in on our net today, and I'm fairly confident we have a lot of others that are listening and gaining tips and tricks and have some thoughts that are coming through your mind. So, so far, so good. Any other comments that you'd like to bring forward? Come back with your call and first name.
This is KJ7LDW Mike.
LDW, Mike, go ahead.
One of the themes that seems to be threading in and out of this that we often take for granted, but having heard Rob on here as a new ham, and who knows how many other new hams are on here, and that is the concept of an Elmer. and whether it's something as simple as a handheld or something much more complicated like an HF rig or something. I mean, Gary N7DND has been my Elmer, and I'm telling you, he has saved me hundreds of dollars. He has given me almost all the tips we've heard on this call tonight. He helped me with, and my life has been a lot easier because I was not afraid to reach out on the one hand, and also that he was so gracious to help. So any new hams, don't hesitate to reach out to an Elmer. Find them and let them help you, because it sure makes life easier.
Thank you, Mike. I do appreciate it. It is nice. I enjoy helping hams, and as my wife would say, the door's always open on my shack. So give me a text, and we can get together. We'll make time, and we'll get you, if you have the simplest question, please ask. I know that my Elmer, AC7H, has taught me a lot over the years, and I've enjoyed Elmering and teaching, so that's good. Back to you, Larry.
Thank you, Gary. On that line of Elmers, we in the club are maintaining a list of people that have volunteered their expertise as Elmers. And so if you haven't gotten on that list, please shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to add you to that. You can select whatever topic that you'd like to Elmer on. And the way that it typically works is we actually get 1 to 2 requests a month through our website for help on different topics. And we go through the list that we have, and that is also available on our Ham Club online information. And we try to find someone that is in the same geographical area as the person that's asking for help, so it's convenient for them to get together and that kind of thing. So we're always looking for more people to volunteer to be Elmers. And remember that an Elmer is somebody that knows more than somebody else. And so you have the ability to help out at any level and just be a resource to the club and to our ham radio community at large. So don't be afraid of reaching out and seeing if you can help to be an Elmer. So with that, I'll go ahead and throw it back over to Gary at 7DND, and he'll start wrapping up this net. So back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you. Well, is there any other questions? I think we ought to wrap up this net. We can do another roundtable in the next few weeks, months, about radio specifics. If you have a Kenwood, a Yaesu, a Bofong, a DMR, a Fusion, a AM, FM, or whatever you happen to have, we can talk about all the specifics of those radios. And we're more than happy. We've got enough expertise in this club that I think we can help you with it. I know that I have a lot of different programs for a lot of different radios that have been shared with me, and I'm more than happy to help you if I can. So is there any questions or comments that we can take now? Come now, please. First name and call sign.
KC7RF.
Hall.
A couple of just quick, for me, memory crutches that sum things up for tonight. One is something that I heard when I first became a ham, and that was put your money in the air, meaning put your money in the antennas. But just remember, put your money in the air, because that's where the signal comes into and goes out of. And that's kind of the thing there. And the other thing is that the license that we all have, whether it be technician, general, or extra, it's a license to learn for all of us. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to either get on the club website and ask them, get on the air and ask the questions. There will be somebody out there that can guide you or point you to an answer. So just don't hesitate to ask, as they've said, for assistance. So anyway, put your money in the air, and you have a license to learn. KC7RF, back to Nick.
Hey, we're getting towards the end of the hour, so I'm going to pass it over to KV7LC, and he's going to talk about what we're going to do next time, and we'll take any final comments after that.
Gary. So this is Larry, KV7LC. In 2 weeks at 7:30 on the same frequency, we'll be able to gather again together, and our topic will be fox hunts. What they are, how to participate, and what kind of equipment you have probably in your desk drawer that will be able to help you to be able to find that fox using your handheld and something as easy as a paper clip. And so that should be a lot of fun. Along with that conversation, we will be posting some resources on our website over the next few weeks about how to build a directional antenna that you hook into that handheld and go out and find that fox. After that, we will schedule for probably just a few days after that, maybe a week, a fox hunt with a fox in a couple of different locations that if you choose to participate, you can go and try to find that fox and take a picture of it and email it to the club with the time that you found that and probably win a prize. And so that will be a lot of fun. That suggestion came from our roundtable 2 weeks ago to do fox hunts and talk about direction finding. And so that should be a great opportunity for us to get out and do something fun and something a little bit different than we normally do with our radios. So be watching for that. And with that, I am clear. I'll put it back over to Gary, who will close us up and ask for any final comments from anyone out there and any of the offices that are out there. This is KV7LC, and I just want to thank you all for being with us. Back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Larry. Just a reminder, Joan asked me to do this. On the 27th, for the Aries races on the Thursday night, we're going to ask everybody if they can to go mobile again, as long as the weather stays good and you can take your handheld or your grab-and-go box or whatever you happen to have and go somewhere and try to communicate in with net control. That's always a fun thing to do, to go and see. I know that every time I take my box and go somewhere, I find something that I'd forgot to do, or something doesn't work, or something doesn't plug into something else, and so I learned from that. So we're asking you to please go and do that. So before I close the net, any more comments, questions, or anything that anybody would like to comment about? First name and call sign.
7PEJ.
An HYP and a TUJ. HYP, you go first, please.
Mentioned a handheld that had incredible battery capacity, but I didn't catch the name. Could he repeat that again?
It's an Anytone, Craig. I've got one here in the shack if you want to come and handle it.
Much, and 7HYP.
The other gentleman, come now, please.
It was Rob with KJ7PEJ. So I just wanted to give some feedback. People talk about new hands being mic shy. One thing that I just want to give some feedback, not trying to sound whiny, is when we're calling out, say hi. I mean, I've talked to 3 people in the group, but there's been days I can scream on all the repeaters and not get anybody. I was getting so discouraged as a new ham with VHF and UHF that I've been trying to get into HF because it seems like UHF and VHF are dead because nobody answers back. And the new ham and I he's up in Ogden, we're discussing that we wondered if we had the shorter 4-character call signs if people would actually answer us back. Clearing back to the net control.
I agree with you in some cases. I know cell phones have made a big difference in our communications, and you have to put it out to get it back. I spend a lot of my time on digital. I have to admit that. To fall on this sword, I found Fusion, and the club has 5 repeaters that have got Fusion all over them, and I know the Ogden Club and Salt Lake have gone to the Fusion repeaters where they go both analog and digital, and I have to tell you that I talk all over the world just at a drop of a hat in the digital world, and I don't spend any more than $100 to go and do it with just have to buy a specific kind of radio. And we can get into digital radios and stuff in another club meeting, but there are a ton of people out there, and I talk to lots of people every day. So You get out of it what you put into it. And thank you for your comment. Get out there and use our repeaters, N7D and D. Any other comments, questions, or whatever else?
K7JKP, Bruce.
Bruce?
Handhelds, although I really enjoyed what you guys talked about tonight. I've experienced all that too, and I think I'm up to about 8 handhelds now, and I like them all. Anyway, is there a place on the internet to start taking practice tests or learn to do the technician test? I've got some people interested in taking that test and want to know the best place to go to practice to take those tests.
Thanks for that question. This is Larry, KV7LC. What I have found to be the most successful is when I have mentored people looking to get their first ticket is that they go ahead and just Google for a radio test, but then try 2 or 3 different websites before you go and take the test. I find that if you just work on one website with practice tests or one app that you've downloaded to your phone, it tends to lean heavy one direction versus another. And so the people I've had the most success mentoring with and Elmering to get their first ticket, I've had them Google a couple of 2 or 3 different places and start just taking the test from there. If they've done that, they usually walk in very prepared and are able to walk out in just a few minutes with their ticket. But I'm going to reach out, Joe, N7JEH. Are you still out there online? Maybe you have some suggestions. Joe is our VE for the club, and he manages the quarterly tests. So maybe he's got some more comments on that. Joe, are you out there?
An MG.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, there are some good sites out there. I would start a new ham on hamstudy.org. It's free. You can register. It'll keep track of your progress, drill you on questions that you tend to miss a lot, and ease off on those that you seem to get right all the time. If you want to download it as an app to your phone, there's a little bit of charge, but just using it in a browser, it's free. KD7MG.
Thanks so much, Mike, for that. That's a great idea, the ham study online. That's a great website. Like I said, there are quite a number of them. You can even check the league's website. They maintain a list of study guides and that kind of thing that could be helpful. So with that, are there any last comments or thoughts that you want to throw out there? This is Kilo Victor 7, Lima Charlie. Come back with your call and first name. All right, hearing none, I just want to thank everyone for your participation tonight on our second DCARC on the air. I think this is a great way for us to become radioactive as a club and to help each other out, try out our radios and see what's going on. And so we're looking forward to the time when we can get together again. Don't know when that's going to be yet. But until then, we'll see you in 2 weeks on the same frequency where we'll be talking about fox hunts and how to get at radioactive looking for a fox. So with that, I'll go ahead and close this net and wish you all 73 and have a great night. This is Kilo Victor 7, Lima Charlie signing out. Have a great day.